It's September 14th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin summit talks. The two leaders of Pyongyang and Moscow showed off the two sides of friendship, with Kim Jong-un promising full support for Russia and Vladimir Putin pledging space technology for North Korea. Putin has also accepted Kim's invitation to visit the regime. And the United States is more concerned than ever about the potential military cooperation and says additional sanctions will be inevitable. Devastating floods in Libya have taken away over 6,000 lives as of Wednesday morning local time. Around 10,000 more people are still missing and are feared dead. North Korea's Kim Jong-un and Russia's Vladimir Putin have renewed their dedication to back one another in their needs and interests, especially in the field of defense. Putin has also welcomed Kim's invitation to visit North Korea. Our Bae Eun-ji reports.
As Kim arrived at a remote space launch site in Russia's Far East, the leaders of the two isolated states exchanged smiles and shook hands. Putin, who's usually late to meetings with other foreign leaders, arrived at the Vostochny Cosmodrome early and waited for Kim for about 30 minutes. Since their meeting in 2019, the war in Ukraine has turned the tables, as it is Putin who's reaching out to Kim for help, with Russia completely isolated on the global stage, in need of help for more weapons. In his opening remarks, Putin thanked Kim for accepting Russia's invitation, saying they have a lot to discuss.
Of course, we need to discuss the issues of economic cooperation and humanitarian issues, as well as the situation in the region.
Sitting next to Putin, Kim said Russia is fighting a sacred war and stressed that his regime would fight together in the battle against imperialism.
We have constantly expressed our full and unconditional support for all the decisions taken by the President and the Russian leadership. And I want to assure you that we will always be together with Russia in the fight against imperialism.
The two leaders held talks for several hours with their ministers before holding a separate one-on-one meeting. This was followed by a lavish lunch where Kim said they held an elaborate discussion about the military and political situation on the Korean Peninsula and in Europe. On the situation in Ukraine, he assured Putin that Russia will win against evil.
The Russian army and people will certainly secure a great victory in the sacred struggle for the punishment of a great evil that claims hegemony and feeds an expansionist illusion.
The North Korean leader also expressed hopes that Wednesday's visit will play an important role in transforming their traditionally friendly relations into a, quote, unbreakable strategic partnership. Meanwhile, Russia has also signaled its willingness to assist Pyongyang. When asked by a reporter whether Russia would help North Korea launch its own satellites and rockets, Putin responded by saying that's exactly why we're here. He added that Kim showed great interest in rocket engineering. Before sitting down for talks, Putin showed Kim around the building, where Russia's new space booster, the Angara, is assembled. The fact that the two leaders chose this specific spaceport for the meeting suggests that North Korea and Russia will enhance security cooperation, as it is a symbol of Russia's ambitions as a space power. From Pyongyang, Kim took a long train journey aboard his private armored train to get there. Putin may offer satellite launch technology to Kim in exchange for North Korean weapons and ammunition. This has been sparking concerns regarding Russia's resupplying of weapons for the war in Ukraine and the development of North Korea's missile capabilities. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
Following the Spaceport Summit, the U.S. once again expressed concerns about Pyongyang and Moscow's apparent military ties and warned that sanctions are sure to happen. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Lee Dae-hyun has more.
The U.S. warns that North Korea and Russia may have to pay the price following the possibility of an arms deal at the bilateral summit between Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin. U.S. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby on Thursday said that should Russia and North Korea decide to move forward with a bilateral arms deal, Washington will take measures to deal with that.
As Jake Sullivan said last week, there will certainly be repercussions for North Korea, both from the United States and from the international community.
He also urged North Korea to not support Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
As I've said before, we continue to urge North Korea to meet its public commitments not to support Russia's war in Ukraine. No nation on the planet, nobody, should be helping Mr. Putin kill innocent Ukrainians.
U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller on the same day also expressed his concerns on potential military ties between Pyongyang and Moscow.
It is troubling when you see the Russians talking about cooperating with North Korea on programs that would violate UN Security Council resolutions that Russia itself voted for.
This comes as Putin, during his summit with Kim, pledged that Russia will support the development of North Korea's satellites as the two met at a Russian spaceport. The State Department spokesperson added that Washington will keep a close eye on the bilateral relations and impose sanctions if needed. The U.S. ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, also said that Russia seeking close ties with North Korea simply shows Moscow's desperation. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, a day before the top summit, said during his podcast interview that Washington doesn't want Russia to secure military power to invade Ukraine, nor Pyongyang gaining technological benefits from Moscow. Though neither North Korea nor Russia has yet made an announcement on Thursday's summit, many forecast that Pyongyang's arms deal to Moscow and Moscow's technological assistance on satellite and missile development had been on the table. The Kremlin, however, said that the bilateral dialogue should not be the concern of any third party. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
The first meeting between Kim and Putin in over 4 years took place at a surprising location, following the North Korean leader's lengthy journey by armored train. Let's discuss their exclusive talks more with Professor Jongun this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Professor, I'd like to start with how Putin waited for 30 minutes to greet North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Now, this is pretty rare considering he's been pretty notorious for not being on time, right?
Right. So, yeah, if you recall President Putin's behavior during the past summit meeting, such kindness appeared very unusual. President Putin has often been late for summit in the past. So it has been analyzed that it's a kind of psychological strategy to gain an advantage in negotiation with foreign leaders. So now, yesterday's actions during the summit with Kim Jong-un might be based on Russia's desperate shortage of ammunition in its war against Ukraine. Especially recently, Ukraine has begun achieve significant progress through counteroffensives and gradually advancing on multiple fronts. I think it has been putting more pressure on Putin.
Right, politeness rooted in desperation at the moment. Now, Kim Jong-un said that his regime will work with Russia to fight against the so-called imperialism in the West. Now, can we say that that means North supports Russia's aggression against Ukraine?
Well, North Korea showed positive reaction from the beginning of the Ukraine war, so it is not so surprising to hear North Korea will stand together in fighting against imperialism. But it is a different thing to hear those statements that can be seen as indicating physical support for Russia in its ongoing military operation in Ukraine, which, of course, those behavior will not only violate numbers of UN sanctions, but also it will become instrumental to destabilize the situation in Ukraine. And ultimately, it will consequently, it will connect the Asian security with European security.
Right. What's also notable is that there was no joint statement or a deal officially inked between the two leaders. Now, would you still say that the two leaders have agreed on a much speculated arms deal and the sharing of advanced technology? Can we say that?
Yeah, it's obvious that both leaders discussed military cooperation plans, including arms deals and trade, which obviously be a violation of UN sanctions. So therefore, official documents like signing or creating documents in this regard might have been a burden for both countries. Where there was no explicit statement of ammunition support from North Korea's side, but it's clear that Russia also has stated that its intention to engage in a space cooperation with North Korea for satellite developments. And North Korea's satellite launches have the potential to be used for ICBM launching and potentially reconnaissance satellite that will watch the entire Korean peninsula, which could enhance their kind of strike capability with more precision and potentially in conjunction with various missile systems. So Even though there was no explicit statement, it is obvious there has been kind of discussing this issue. So it will increasing threat to the Korean Peninsula and beyond.
Right, because the technology used in making ballistic missiles is exactly the one that they're using to create those spy satellites.
Right.
Then the question is, how and when will we actually know whether or not a weapons deal was made? Because there was no official statement.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we can actually watch those kind of trade will appear as satellites. Actually, United States and other countries has been tracking down those movements. So, for instance, like satellite images could be used to observe the shipment and movement of weapons from the space. And simultaneously, we can verify their activities and kind of trade deals on the Ukraine front lines.
Right, and the North Korea, they also said they will aim for another satellite launch attempt in the coming months. So maybe that will make a difference.
Well, I think it has been said it will be October this year. So
right.
It could be a little bit too soon, but I think in the coming years, there will be some kind of developments.
Right, as early as October. Now, in the meantime, China said of the Kim-Putin summit that the meetup is a matter between the two sides. This is not a totally unexpected reaction from Beijing, right?
Exactly. So I think we need to look at the situation where Russia requested support from North Korea instead of China this time, which must have possessed a higher level of weaponry and a larger quantity of ammunition than North Korea. So it may be because China refused Russia's request. It is possible that China did not want to pursue military cooperation on the Ukraine issue, and also including joint military exercise with North Korea in a trilateral format. So even though Russia and China may maintain a reasonably friendly relationship with Russia bilaterally, but at the same time, they do not want like trilateral kind of gathering, which can be seen as a kind of rogue coalitions from the perspective of United States and other Western countries. So in this sense, so given that China is not fully aligned with Russia and trilateral cooperations, I think we need to make an effort how we can put China on kind of maintain kind of hedging positions at least in terms of Ukraine crisis and comply with this rules-based order kind of principles of not to support on Ukraine issue.
Right. Joining that trio may be too much for Beijing at the moment because its interests are not aligning with what Pyongyang and Moscow have.
That's true.
All right, Professor Tang, thank you so much for your insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The death toll from the devastating floods in Libya topped 6,000 on Wednesday, with local authorities predicting that figure could rise to well over 10,000. Authorities say that around 10,000 people are still missing, potentially either swept out to the sea or buried beneath rubble in the city of Derna. The nation's health minister says rescue teams are working day and night to collect bodies scattered from the streets, with some washing up on beaches. According to the UN's International Organization for Migration, more than 30,000 people have been displaced by the flooding. The South Korean government on Wednesday expressed its condolences to the people of Libya, adding that it will closely work with the Libyan authorities and the international community to provide necessary support. The U.S. Consumer Price Index rose 3.7% on-year last month, ticking higher from the month before. Now, August inflation sped up as gas prices climbed. Lee Seung-ja has more.
The U.S. is seeing inflation accelerate for a second straight month in August. According to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics released Wednesday, the U.S. Consumer Price Index rose 3.7% in August from a year earlier, up from July's figure of 3.2%. The latest inflation figure is slightly higher than the 3.6% rise economists were expecting. In addition, on a month-to-month basis, prices rose 0.6%, matching forecasts, while the core annual index also met expectations, easing to 4.3% from 4.7% in July, its slowest pace since September 2021. The latest report also indicated that the index for gasoline was the largest contributor to the monthly all-items increase, accounting for over half of the increase. The CPI's gasoline index spiked 10.6% in August from a month earlier, up sharply from a 0.2% gain in July. With all major energy component indexes increasing, the overall energy index rose 5.6%. Also, the shelter index rose for the 40th consecutive month. Global oil prices have been rising recently, with the OPEC Plus cutting production and demand surging. Watchers say the deadly floods in Libya will also disrupt oil exports further, pushing up prices at the pump even more. However, economists say that despite a rise in inflation, the U.S. Fed is still expected to hold rates steady next week during their FOMC meeting, citing lower consumer spending and a weaker U.S. job market. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea's commitment to fly net zero by 2050 is picking up speed. Efforts to secure itself as a first mover in the hydrogen economy are evident at the world's largest hydrogen exhibition. Our Moon Hae-ryun was there.
Around a quarter of all carbon reduction by 2050 is predicted to be achieved through the use of hydrogen, which set the tone for this year's H2 meet. Starting on Wednesday through to Friday, it's the biggest hydrogen-related exhibition in the world and is hosted by South Korea every year.
Exhibitions like this are getting bigger and bigger every year as countries aim to go carbon neutral. This year's turnout is the biggest yet, with 280 companies from 17 countries in attendance.
During the opening ceremony, the second Vice Minister of the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy spoke of the importance of global cooperation for hydrogen alternatives to fossil fuels as the world grapples with extreme weather and global warming.
In order to build a clean, hydrogen-centered ecosystem that can contribute to greenhouse gas reduction substantially, we will establish a clean hydrogen certification system within the year and secure a stable supply chain through global cooperation.
South Korea is currently dominating the global hydrogen auto industry with a market share of over 35%. However, according to market research company SNE Research, hydrogen-fueled cars are lagging with a nearly 10% decline in sales between January and July this year compared to the same period last year. This has been attributed to the lack of necessary infrastructure such as charging stations as well as high storage and distribution costs. As a result, companies are seeking to make hydrogen cheaper and more accessible. Hyundai Motor's business model is to collect food waste as a source of hydrogen to lower production costs and make hydrogen truly net zero. Steel manufacturer POSCO has developed new hydrogen fuel tanks made of thin steel strips that can be recycled after usage to replace the traditional carbon-based fuel tanks, and storage cylinders made of stronger steel with a lower production cost than the original. Hanoi Group showcased its integrated value chain for producing, storing and distributing clean hydrogen.
We will be shipping hydrogen using our ships from Hanoi Ocean and storing hydrogen using our hydrogen tanks, which are the biggest in the world.
As South Korea slowly phases out grey hydrogen produced from fossil fuels to clean hydrogen, the government and domestic companies hope to further research and development to help them achieve their carbon neutrality goals. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in Vietnam, where at least 56 people, including 4 children, have died in an apartment building fire. Now, Vietnamese media have reported that the blaze in the capital Hanoi late on Tuesday evening also injured 37 others. The cause of the fire is being determined, but according to witnesses, it began in the parking garage of the 9-story building, where many bikes were parked. Firefighters struggled to save those trapped in the building due to its location in a narrow alley and a lack of fire escapes. The owner of the building has been arrested on charges of violating fire prevention regulations. Hanoi is a fast-growing city and has seen a number of new apartments being built in recent years. But local authorities say many of these do not meet fire safety rules. In the United States, leaders in big tech, including Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, are meeting with lawmakers in Congress to discuss the future of artificial intelligence and laws that could govern it. 3 separate meetings on AI are being held this week on Capitol Hill. The meetings come before lawmakers begin drafting AI policies to protect against potentially dangerous material, including deepfakes. And some big tech leaders seem to be mostly in agreement on the need for regulation.
I think it is important for similar reasons to have a regulator which you can think of as a referee to ensure that companies take actions that are safe and in the interest of the general public.
Now, there is still a way to go, however, as there's no consensus on what regulation should look like. The scientists say that humanity has crossed 6 of the 9 boundaries for livability on Earth. That's according to a report published on Wednesday in Science Advances by an international team of 29 experts. The boundaries are considered safe limits that should not be exceeded if people are to survive on the planet. They include integrity of the biosphere, climate change, and the use and availability of fresh water. The report specifically warned against increasing deforestation, excessive biomass use, and the spread of man-made products like plastic. It also said that the planet's health is now well outside of the safe operating space for humanity. The remaining boundaries not yet breached are ocean acidification, ozone depletion, and air pollution. And finally, Mexico's Congress has unveiled a pair of alleged mummified alien bodies. These small shriveled specimens were put on display on Tuesday at Mexico's first public hearing on unidentified anomalous phenomena. Now, Mexican journalist and UFO enthusiast Jaime Maussan made the reveal, claiming that the corpses were extraterrestrials. Each of the corpses has 3 fingers per hand and an elongated head. He said they were found in 2017 in Peru and are 1,000 years old. According to one medical expert, X-rays and DNA testing have shown that the corpses are not related to human beings. But there are doubts, as similar corpse findings have turned out to be the mummified remains of children.
Good morning. It rained all day yesterday in the capital area. It wasn't coming down hard, but moderate enough to cause headaches for drivers and pedestrians. Rain has let up in most of central parts of the country, but parts of the south and east of Gangwon-do province are seeing rain this morning, and it's going to rain all day today. And east of Gangwon-do could see more than 100 millimeters of showers. The rest of the country will see 10 to 70 millimeters of rain. It won't be a rainy day for central areas, which will boost temperatures to the warmer side again. Seoul will be 4 degrees higher this afternoon at 29 degrees, but rain-affected regions will be as breezy as yesterday, hovering around mid-20s this afternoon in most of southern regions, and morning sunshine in the upper regions will be joined by clouds in the afternoon. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Friday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.